everyone. Welcome to another installment of Fox Legal Training's Primary Market Education Series. In this series, we cover the covenant analysis tools and tips that I recommend to clients and students from my years of analyzing covenants using primary market deals as a teaching tool. So for today's installment, we're going to use the two deals in primary market this week, Ask Chemicals and Omnia Technologies, in order to do a sort of comparison in relative flexibility of covenants. Now, not taking into account any other aspects between these two deals. Obviously, when you're doing a relative value analysis between two deals, you compare more than just covenant flexibility. But I saw some notable features that were different in one deal versus the other that did show how covenants can be structured to be more flexible for borrowers or more protective for lenders, depending on how you're looking at it. And I thought it would be a useful way to demonstrate this. So I'm just going to share my screen and head on over to these two OMs, which I've set here side by side. Now, redemption is the first place that I start when I'm reviewing a deal, but you cannot compare like for like on redemption because the Ask Chemicals are fixed rate notes and the Omnia notes are floating rate. So the redemption provisions are going to be very different. The Omnia notes, Omnia Technology senior secured floating rate notes are going to be non-call one. Typically, they're not going to have any of the 10% at 103 or other redemption features that you can sometimes see. Whereas Ask Chemicals does have a 10% at 103, which I've noted in my comments on the deal. And I do make all of my comments on new issued deals available to Fox Legal Training students on the primary market education series part of the site of the course. So you can see the 10% of 103 is set out here, and it's also set out in the description of notes. But Omnia is not going to have a similar provision, so it's not really a way you could compare the two deals. The next thing I do is look at the debt covenant. And one thing I did notice in a difference between these two deals is that the Omnia Technologies debt covenant has an available RP amounts basket, whereas the Ask Chemicals deal does not. So I'm just going to the provision, which is clause 13. You can see there's available RP capacity amount basket here. Obviously, can't show you something that doesn't exist here, but it is not present in the Ask Chemicals deal. So what that means is new technologies will have the ability to convert available restricted payments capacity into debt capacity. And Ask does not have that same flexibility. So they will have more limited debt capacity in general. Now, to compare secured debt capacity, I wanted to demonstrate the differences between the size of the two borrowers' general permitted lien. So permitted liens, after you do the debt covenant analysis, you go on to do permitted collateral liens and permitted liens analysis to determine to what extent the debt covenant capacity can be secured. The general permitted liens basket will be available to secure any of the debt covenant capacity. So comparing from one deal to another can be helpful because it will show you just the general size of that flexibility, the ability to secure basically any of the debt covenant capacity. So just going to the permitted lien, there we go. And I actually did also mark the general permitted lien here. So in the Ask Chemicals deal, it is a greater of 20 million and 22% of consolidated EBITDA, whereas in Omnia Technologies, it is at the greater of 49 million and 40% of consolidated EBITDA. So nearly twice as much capacity for secured debt in the general permitted liens basket. I would then move on to the restricted payments covenant, where I noted some interesting differences in the two borrowers' builder baskets. Obviously, the builder basket has got a lot more attention given the use of Altice to use builder basket capacity to transfer assets away from lenders. So it's definitely one which is worth looking at. And in these two deals, comparing them side by side, you can see Ask Chemicals actually has a fairly traditional style builder basket. The two conditions are no default or event of default. And actually, the fixed charge coverage ratio requires that it be 2.7 times, which is actually higher than the borrower's ratio test of 2 times. And I would consider to be one of the more protective that I have seen. It also has a builder basket based on 50% of consolidated net income that will reduce by 100% of losses, so long as the basket does not go below zero. So those basket profits can be reduced by losses, but will not go below zero. And you compare that to Omnia Technologies, you've got only event of default under clauses 1, 2, and 5, which are payment and insolvency defaults, and that the borrower is able to incur €1 of ratio debt, which is keyed directly to the level in the debt covenant, which is what you would typically expect to see. And then the builder basket has the provision in it that we've seen in Samantania a couple weeks ago, where any amount in the basket will not be less than zero. So it's built by 50% of consolidated net income. However, it will not take into account negative consolidated net income, which means to me that actually this is a basket that always goes up and that doesn't ever go down, because any negative amount will not be less than zero. Sorry, any amount will not be less than zero, so negative amounts are not actually taken into account. And that was the other point that I wanted to raise in between these two deals. The other comparison, I would say permitted investments capacity is generally a lot more expansive in the Omnia Technologies deal than in the Ask Chemicals deal, which basically just has an unrestricted subsidiaries permitted investments basket and a general permitted investments basket. And then the last point that I will make is in terms of financial calculations. In the Ask Chemicals deal, the financial calculations covenant is actually quite limited. The amount of financial calculations flexibility that the borrower has is effectively limited to being able to calculate capacity on the date of the commitment for a transaction rather than at closing of the transaction, but that is at the borrower's option. So they do always have the ability to, if the capacity is better, to assess that at the time of closing instead. Now, there is no super grower. The EBITDA add backs are not completely expansive. So it's very different formulations than Omnia Technology, which has EBITDA add backs in terms of forward-looking purchase synergies, forward-looking sales synergies, forward-looking group initiative synergies. And there's also a super grower in here, which means that the borrower will preserve a high watermark for any of their fixed baskets that increase in line with their growers, but these will never go back down again if EBITDA decreases. So this obviously gives the borrower, this provision in Omnia Technologies gives the borrower a lot more flexibility in financial covenant calculations, or financial calculations rather, than the Ask Chemicals, which really does not contain quite such expansive provisions. So that marks the end of my comparison between the covenants in these two deals. I hope that's been helpful as a way of being able to use covenants as different covenant terms as a way to benchmark covenant flexibility. Obviously, the investment case is going to be completely different depending on all the other aspects you take into consideration for a deal. But in terms of relative covenant flexibility, the Ask Chemicals deal is a tighter, more protective covenant package than the Omnia Technologies deal. Those were just a few of the examples that I found. Obviously not all, and this is not intended to be a comprehensive covenant analysis, but I will upload the two different offering memoranda onto the Primary Market Education Series course on the Fox Legal Training platform. So if you would like to access those, please don't hesitate to get in touch. You can reach me at sabrina@foxlegaltraining.com. I know the lighting has been a little on and off here, but I'm actually traveling, so I'm not in my normal environment. I hope the sound has been okay as well. But I thought this was just a fun way of comparing two deals, so I wanted to get this video done for everyone today. I hope everyone is well, and I hope that you have found that useful. Again, don't hesitate to get in touch if you have any questions, and have a great day.